Big case, potentially a landmark case in front of the Supreme Court. Oral arguments happened yesterday in the 303 creative case, which I really think could be a landmark First Amendment case now that the balance of the court has shifted rightwards. Folks are expecting this to change what happened in the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, which a lot of people might remember. Jack Phillips, who's a Colorado baker, ended up in the Supreme Court because essentially he was being compelled legally to create what he sees as art, which would be the decoration of a cake, the baking of a cake, the decoration of a cake for causes like same-sex marriages that he didn't agree with. He said, I'll happily serve any customer. It doesn't matter race, sex, religion, sexual orientation. I will serve any customer. I can't create art that violates my values. So that ended up at the Supreme Court as to whether the government, for the sake of preventing discrimination, can compel him to do that. Lori Smith is now in front of the Supreme Court. She's also from Colorado, and she is doing the same thing, basically. She's a graphic designer, a website designer. So she's saying she doesn't want to create wedding websites for same-sex couples, and Colorado has that protective anti-discrimination law. That's what got Jack Phillips, ended up having the court case of Jack Phillips and Masterpiece in the first place because of Colorado law. Ryan,
so what was the precise result of the wedding cake
It keeps
decision?
going back and forth.
Was the cake maker told that, because the law, I know the law was upheld, but there was some carve out for the cake maker or something?
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's not a clean cut. And that's what the right is hoping for in 303 Creative, that you would have a clean cut protection of conscience in this case.
So basically they carved out, they're like, all right, you don't have to make this particular cake.
Yeah, it was, and
but everybody else has to follow the law.
And Jack Phillips continues to get sued to do the same thing, to make the same types of cakes. And so it's one of those things where the right is hoping that there can be a more clear-cut protection in this case. And, you know, the oral arguments yesterday were interesting. Ryan, we both had a similar reaction just looking at some of the stuff as it goes down. Let's actually put, let's play the SOT D2 because we get the audio clips from the oral arguments, which is always fun. So here's one from yesterday.
In light of what Justice Kennedy wrote in Obergefell about honorable people who object to same-sex marriage, do you think it's fair to equate opposition to same-sex marriage with opposition to interracial marriage?
Yes, because in how the law applies, not in the discussion with folks, because, of course, honorable people have different views on this issue.
There was a lot of back and forth that went in some very strange hypotheticals were floated.
Black Santa?
Yes, and it went in, that was, you were hearing the voice of the Colorado Solicitor General, Eric Olson, who was defending the comparison of race and sexual orientation. A lot of justices pushed him on that note. And the people who analyze courts and analyze these oral arguments seemed to think it was pretty clear where this decision was going to go, which was favoring Lori Smith. What did you make of what we heard from the court?
I mean, it does seem like they've got the votes, and they're gonna try to ram this through. The question will be how wide or narrow it is. But let's be clear here about what Lori Smith is asking for. Nobody has come to her and asked her to make a website for a same-sex marriage. Like, that hasn't happened yet, and it seems like she wants to make one of these sites where basically you fill in your name, your date, like when your wedding is. You can upload your photos. Like, you're basically the one that's doing the designing, but you know, she'll like make the fonts and the pretty part in the background. And she wants to put up on. She hasn't built this yet. She wants to build it. She wants to put up on her site that same-sex marriages need not apply. Like, it need not try to do business at her shop. Like, this is only for opposite sex couples. Like, she wants to be able to put that on her website rather than somebody having walked through the door and said, hey, we'd like a website. And so that takes it, that I think is where the landmark element comes in, because if she can do that, then why can't Facebook do that? Why can't Twitter do that? Why can't any other private company say that we don't allow same-sex couples to use our services.
But that's not what she's. I mean, she will serve any same-sex couple. She won't make a website for a same-sex wedding. She won't make a website that is specifically for the act of a wedding. And I would think.
But that's what her business is going to be.
Right. But that doesn't mean she wouldn't. Right. So, but it's the marriage itself. That doesn't mean that like she wouldn't design a website. And it's the same thing with Jack Phillips. It's not that he wouldn't make a cake or decorate a cake for somebody's birthday, whatever their sexual orientation happened to be, or whatever their race or sex or whatever it was. They will still be served. They happily will be served by the business. But the wedding itself, if it violates your religious values. And that's why I think this case is so interesting, because this is a really fundamental question about the First Amendment. And you're right that, like, I actually talked to her a few months back, and that was one of the things that I was getting at is, what is taking this to court? Where is this going and why? And the Jack Phillips case it really did shake a lot of Christians in Colorado who said, we're just trying to operate businesses here and follow our values at the same time. And you've heard similar cases like this come up from Muslim businesses, from Orthodox Jewish businesses, and it's becoming a real point of tension in society. And I think that's why a case like this and somebody like Lori Smith is saying, I want to, whatever you think of the motivation to seek the protection, the protection in and of itself is a pretty big tension point in the country right now.
And it's the same one that the kind of diner owners in North Carolina in the 1960s were using, right? It was that it was the First Amendment right of somebody who owns a lunch counter to just serve whoever they want to serve.
Yeah, that's the Barry Goldwater argument too,
right,
who was very involved with the NAACP, who was saying it's not the federal government's responsibility to determine how a business owner wants to discriminate, which we have obviously rejected with the Civil Rights Act and in federal court since then. But that was the argument being made.
I think right, and so I think the Supreme Court I think still believes that. I don't think even this 6-3 majority would say that no, actually, a public accommodation like a diner is free to discriminate based on that. That's not speech. Like that doesn't count as speech.
Yeah, you can't discriminate based on race.
Right.
Yeah.
But can you discriminate based on sexuality?
Well, and that's again where the Civil Rights Act was always a really interesting test case for this, because if somebody claims their religion is racist, right? They outright say, my religion discriminates based on race. Well, the federal government has stepped in and basically said, we don't care if your religion says that you should be discriminating and segregating. If you have a pro-segregationist religious belief, you are not able to practice that as a business owner. In your private property, the federal government is stepping in. Now, I think that is a very, very reasonable, a very reasonable distinction. Now, in this case, what's happened is that our public opinion on same-sex marriage has shifted very, very quickly, and it's a similar sort of test point. But at the same time, I think it's pretty much within the boundaries of, she has a position on same-sex marriage that Barack Obama had about 10 years ago. Literally 10 years ago.
And I think it's fine to say that businesses should be able to choose, what business they want to do. Like if somebody comes into a T-shirt shop and wants a pornographic T-shirt made, a T-shirt shop can be like, no, that's not the kind of thing that we do. Or if it's a kind of if it's like let's say it's a right-wing T-shirt shop, they shouldn't have to make gun control like T-shirts, or if it's a left-wing one, they shouldn't have to make AR-15 T-shirts. Like I get that, but to say that an entire class of people, which are gay people, are not entitled to use this product, I think is different. Now, I don't think that you should force a poet to write a poem for a wedding that they don't support. I don't think you should force a harpist to play at one. Like if you're an artist, that's one thing. You can pick and choose. Now,
but Jack Phillips sees his work as
although
art.
I don't think. No, let me take a harpist.
And so
back.
does Lori.
Let me take a harpist back. Like I think a harpist. If you do wedding businesses, you should do all wedding businesses. Within reason. If you're booked that day, you can't do it. Like you can turn down business, but to turn down business, well, no, I won't play harp at a gay marriage like that. That I think a gay wedding, I don't think is okay within the bounds. That's not your speech. That's just a service. So I don't think.
But she sees it as her art, and then you get to this question.
But she's already made like it's.
But
the
government
it's like a fill in the blanks website. Like I think she needs to get over herself with like. Whether this is her speech. It's not her speech. It's not her wedding. It's their wedding. It's their love. Like, stop. It's not you. Like,
so
it's just your website.
You just agree that what she's doing in terms of website design is creative. And that, I think, so, but then the government is determining whether baking a cake is art. When Jack Phillips, who's been doing this for decades, sees it as art. He sees it as
and he won on
his
that
passion.
grounds, right?
Yeah, and then, so again, this is the government coming in and drawing the line as to what constitutes art, what constitutes speech, what constitutes, all of these questions I think are good ones to work out, but my colleague David Harsani wrote a decent question. He was talking about, he says, would Cole, who says the ACLU has been this nation's leading defender of free speech for more than a century, call for the state to intervene in the case of an evangelical customer who wants to compel a gay designer to create a website for an organization that wants to overturn same-sex marriage laws and preaches that acts of homosexuality are a mortal sin? And that's why, again, we get into this a lot with, like, evangelical Christians have a very particular cultural connotation right now, but this happens to people that are not just evangelical Christians. It happens to Muslims, it happens to Orthodox Jews, as we just were talking about. And if the protections, I think, are not enshrined, it will happen to other people. It will happen to people who are pro-LGBT and get pushed on this by people who are anti. And so I just think this protection in the sort of from the broader perspective is a worthwhile one. And I think just this discussion is a testament to how interesting these questions are and how fundamental they are to the way we function as a country.
And I wonder if the country can get to a place where the war is so thoroughly won on that question that if there are a couple businesses that don't want to do it, that it doesn't hamper people's ability to get it done, because throughout history there's always tension between overreach and how much you force people along. Like if you take like the French Revolution, where they basically just like annihilate the Catholic Church, like that ended up not working out so well for them eventually. And so if they had been a little bit more, if they had created more space, as they did later in the revolution, for people who were like, look, I'm not against the revolution, but we just want to keep our priests. Yeah. They were eventually like, okay, you know what, that's fine.
And that's a good point, because I think we're basically, I actually think we're pretty much there. And that's been the case with Jack Phillips. It's definitely the case with Lori Smith, and it's definitely the case with Barron Merrill Stutzman up in Washington State, a florist. There are plenty of options at the same price point in all of these places. What happens is these, in some cases, it's activists, are intentionally pushing the question and intentionally trying to get it to the courts.
Which this one was, right?
How do you mean? Yes, yeah. This case basically from start to finish, yes. And again, we're working it out in the court. So, but to your point, pending this decision, but I think the good news is, customers can get the product that they're looking for at this stage in the country, regardless of where they fall on that question. There are people who will serve you.
And I think it's hard for people in particularly LGBTQ community to feel comfortable in their gains at this point because of the backsliding that they're seeing from, say, like from the Fox News world. You're getting all of these kind of drag queen story hour panics being built up, and so I think it's like, while from the right, you guys look around and you're like, you guys won. What are you worried about? You've got it. Just let us have our little web design company here in peace. From their perspective, they're still under siege. And when both sides feel under siege, it's really hard for either to kind of reach a compromise, I think.
Absolutely, and I think that's what we see when we get these kind of test cases making their way through the court system. So we'll continue to follow this one for sure.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.